All right, man. So, look, I may be ill-informed on this. First of all, how you doing? I hope all is well, man. I hope everything is going fantastic for you in life. I hope your day, your week, your month, your year is going superb. I hope this video finds you in the best of health and spirits. You feel me? I'm doing all right. All praises due to Allah. But anyway, so look, let's talk about money rights. You really don't have any. I know that we barely talk about money rights, right? Now, you have like property rights, you know what I'm saying, which is like different from money rights. But even with property rights, like your home, you know, there's this thing called eminent domain, and if the government really wanted to, you know, they can seize your home and then pay you appropriate sum for it or whatever, but, or maybe not, you know what I mean? But, you know, you really don't have property. Okay, so let's kind of break this down a little bit. Or you really don't have money, I should say, like money rights. So, you know, like let's say freedom of speech, right? Like, yeah, I got freedom of speech, but let's say going on Twitter or going on Facebook or Instagram, my freedom of speech is subject to whoever runs the platform, right? And this person, group, department that's running this platform can censor my speech. And because it's a private entity, you know, it seems to be fine. You know what I mean? It can be good. I think the Supreme Court is deliberating on whether, you know, whether or not social media platforms, because of the way that governments use those things, to whether or not, you know, you can censor free speech on those things. I think that's being debated right now, but whatever, that's neither here nor there. But, you know, there's a law that says I have a right, right? And that law says that government cannot encroach on my right to say things, right? To talk freely. Then you got like the Second Amendment, right? And you got, I forgot what the Third Amendment is, but then you got Fourth Amendment, which is, you know, you have a right to privacy in your home and on your person and your things and whatnot, right? These are rights that are written down and, you know, agreed to in the contract of the Constitution. You know, there's things that aren't in the Constitution. They're in the Constitution, but your right to them is not necessarily in that. They're explained in that, right? And one of those things is money. Money is not really a thing that you have to have. You have a right to property, right? And so, you know, the reason why a country shouldn't trample all over your rights to speech or to property or to searches and seizures, things like that, is because now, you know, if we all have this agreement that we agree to by living in this country, if we have an agreement on how things are supposed to go, and the government continuously tramples on everybody's rights to do those things, now we begin to break that social contract, and, you know, now nobody has any faith or trust that any of these laws matter, and then they can just make up whatever laws that they want, right? And that becomes a problem. That could be a real issue for people, especially if people are in dire circumstances and they, you know, really value their right to speech, their right to bear arms, you know, their right to not be searched, their right to privacy, you know, things like that, right? And then also, if it gets, I mean, really far from that, then now all of that goes out the window. You know what I mean? The speech I'm able to say is no longer protected by the government, but now if the government basically is nullified because we don't know what rules they're going by, now the right for me to say anything is subject to the reaction of an everyday citizen's emotional response to it. You know what I mean? Or however they choose to interpret whatever it is I'm saying. And so, you know, now we're talking about a gray area for rights that people should have. And, you know, it's an argument to be made that rights are really God-given. It's true. And I think you have the right to, you know, speech. You have the right to protect yourself. You have the right to, you know, privacy You have the right to freedom of religion, freedom of the press, right? Like, you have the right to naturally, like God, whatever religion you subscribe to, God, the God of your religion doesn't force you to worship him or her or them or it, right? You can be however you want. You could be as rebellious as you want. Look at all the religions today. Everybody's rebellious than a mug, and whatever God they're serving hasn't come and smited them all down. You know what I mean? Like, it's up to you. People can say, I don't believe in any religion or any God or whatever, right? You have those rights, but then if you can't enforce those rights, then they're really useless, right? The government is there to mitigate the dispute over your rights and protect you from people who are encroaching on your rights. But if the government wasn't there to do it, or if the government's interest was no longer aligned with preserving your rights, then your rights are only as good as you're able to protect them. And there's a number of means that you may be able to use, but essentially that's the metric, that you can only, your rights are only as good as your ability to protect them, to protect their integrity. All right, so I say all that as a preface to conceptually lay a foundation for the right to money, which you don't have. You and I do not have this stuff, all right? We don't really have a right to money. Our earned wages are our property, true. The things that we buy are our property, true. But if we were to relinquish control of said property to a third-party entity, right? Now we no longer have control over those things. And all right, let's take banking. This is a great way to explain this, right? Banking. You earned your money, however you did it, wages, whatever it was. You flipped Bitcoin, you sold it, blah, blah, blah. You paid your taxes, and now you got this money sitting in the bank. It's good to go. You can spend it, whatever. You choose not to spend it. You save it, keep it in the bank, and now it's in the bank. However, you signed a little agreement with the bank. And the agreement with the bank is, you're giving us this money. We're going to do what we want with it. We owe you access to the money, and we owe you an interest on the money that we use to, make money with, right? But, like, for example, let's say you lend your car to your cousin. If you lend your car to your cousin and your cousin doesn't bring it back, it's not stealing. You lent it to this person. It was your decision to give the car to this person, trusting them that within a period of time you'll get it back. That's the same thing with banks, all right? So at any moment, a bank can close up, right? It's a business. It's not a government entity. It's a business, right? And if a bank decides to close up, if a bank goes bankrupt, they don't owe you any money. Now, sure, you can collect up to $100,000 in your bank account from the FDIC. But if a lot of banks started closing, man, there's not enough money in the FDIC to cover all of those, withdrawals, all the money that's been deposited with these banks. And you really have no right to the money if they don't give it to you. Like, you'd have to go through litigation, go to court, sue them, and a judge would have to rule that, okay, yeah, the bank owes you this money, blah, blah, blah. But if the bank files for something like Chapter 11, declares bankruptcy and whatnot, blah, 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 well, then now you got a problem, because now the bank doesn't owe you anything. You decided to give that money to the bank. It was your decision. Tough luck. This bank closed up. Should have chose a better bank. That's the kind of conversation you're probably going to have with a judge should something like that occur. All right, so, and because this is not something that's really, like, at least to my knowledge, maybe I'm wrong. I'm not like a constitutionalist, or what do you call it? Constitutional, what do you call it? I don't study the Constitution, right? I know a little bit about it, but maybe it is in there somewhere. I just don't know. But as far as I know, you don't have a right to your money that you put into the bank, right? You can consider that to be as good as a bad investment. If you put money in a bank, in a savings account, in a checking account, it would be like you did a bad investment if the bank was not able to give you your money back. All right, then let's look at kind of the mechanics of what you're doing. You're taking dollars that are printed from the Federal Reserve that are not backed by anything. They're only backed by the full faith and credit of the US government, which is like $35 trillion in debt, or 33 or something like that. There's not much credit there. Imagine if you were $33 trillion in debt, like, what, and you couldn't pay on your loan. Like, do you think that, the credit bureaus would be saying, man, Teddy, I know you owe this 33 trillion, but your credit's good with us, bro? No, they wouldn't. You know what I mean? And so you have fiat money, paper dollars. It's backed by the full faith and credit of the US government. It's not backed by gold. It's not backed by real estate. It's not backed by anything tangible. It's backed by a completely intangible, ethereal, hard to value concept. It's not even a thing. It's not even a noun, really, right? Full faith and credit of the US government. Okay, so you take this stuff, these debt notes is what they're called, debt notes, full faith, backed by the full faith and credit of the US government, and you worked hard, you spent 40 hours a week for how many years, and bonuses and extra overtime and blah, 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 and you did sales and you invested and you did all this stuff, and then you put it in the bank. Okay, you put this debt note stuff in the bank. It's really not even money at the end of the day. It's really not money. It's only money because you and I and us, all the people around here, we all believe that it is money, and we use it as it's money because we believe that it's money, and so, it acts as money, but it's really not, because there's really no value to it other than our belief, which is different from virtually any other kind of money that you could use, like gold or cryptocurrencies, well, Bitcoin specifically, and other stuff, right? Okay, then you put it in a bank, okay? And when you put it in the bank, the moment that you do that, it's not yours anymore, right? In crypto, we have this saying called not your keys, not your Bitcoin. If I don't have the keys to the account where I can pull my funds out anytime I want to, right? Or I can lock that account up to where nobody can access it except me. If I don't have the key to that account, then it's not mine. Whoever else has the key to that account, it's theirs, really, at the end of the day. And so, if it's not your keys, not your coin, and the same goes for the money. Like, if you don't hold control of the account, it's not your money, right? The minute you gave it to them, it's not yours anymore. And I know this may be a very difficult concept for you to wrap your head around. And if it is, I suggest you seriously study, especially if you got your whole life savings in these banks, okay? I want you to seriously take a look at the mechanics of how this works, not the way we treat it. You know what I mean? Like, I turn my car on, I put it in gear, I step on the gas, my car goes, right? And that's how I treat it. I treat it as the thing that just goes, right? But if for some reason, someday, I hit the gas pedal and it's not going anymore, I got to figure out where mechanically some things went wrong. And if I can't figure out what went wrong to make it right, you know what I mean? Or if I don't understand the mechanics of how my car worked, right, then I might not understand why one day it doesn't go when I hit the gas pedal. And that's the same thing for your bank account, man. One day you might hit your bank account and it might say, hey, you know what? Call customer service. Call customer service. We got to talk to you, Teddy, about the money in your bank account. Oh, man. Got to have a conversation with you, bro. Sorry, and that kind of thing. And so when you put your money into the bank, it's not even yours anymore. It's theirs, right? It's not yours. You know what I mean? And then this bank, banking is crazy. When you really get down to the nitty gritty of banking, it's nuts how this system even works. It's freaking crazy. there's this thing. It's called fractional reserve banking, lending, etc. It's where if you deposited $100 with me into my bank, and I could then create an agreement, a note, based on that $100 for up to $1,000 of your 100. Okay, so I can lend that money out 10x from the 1x that you gave me. All right, you gave me 100. I can just write a note that says, "Hey, I'm backed for $100 on this note of 1,000." Right? You know, it could be a promissory note. Most of the time, it's fractional reserve notes, but these are just notes. I'm like, now we're getting into like the mechanics of finance and how laws are written in a way where you can produce money out of thin air, right? Like literally out of thin air. I mean, you think the Federal Reserve is printing? Sure, they are. And when that money hits a bank, the bank now prints up to 10x of what the Federal Reserve printed. And that's how it goes. You know what I mean? And so now, people are getting loans with this. People are buying cars with this stuff. People are doing all kinds of stuff with this, fractional reserve lending. But if everybody decided that, you know what, hey, I'm finally understanding how banking works. I don't want to keep my money in this bank anymore. Can you please give it back? If everybody did that, the first 10% could probably get their funds back. The remaining 90 cannot. I want you to really, if this is news to you, you got to do some studying, especially if you're relying on that bank account of yours, okay? Now, we're coming up on an era. There's been a lot of talk about it. The first draft of this was inserted into the first stimulus bill. I believe it was March 22nd of 2020. I've covered it on this channel before. I brought up the screenshots and everything. And you can just download the document, the first version of the stimulus bill, March 21st or 22nd, 2020. And you will find that they have language in there that talks about how they're going to deliver the stimulus checks. And they were going to do it via private wallets on an app that you were just going to download that was going to be government run. It's crazy. I mean, it sounds crazy if you're not paying attention. I've been paying attention to finance, US dollar, Bitcoin, crypto, all that kind of stuff. So when it popped up on my feed, I was like, oh, what's that? That sounds interesting. And then I actually downloaded the document and I read it. I was like, wow, they're really rolling out their own version of a crypto wallet, but it's going to be US dollars. It's called CBDCs, Central Bank Digital Currencies. Almost all the countries out there, the countries that are not really, hyper adopting Bitcoin, are rolling out things like this. And it's a way, all right, so look, right now, the current currency is dead. It's killed. The petrodollar is dead. Petrodollar was an agreement, I believe this is how it works. I haven't looked at it in a while, but it was an agreement between the Saudis, I think it was OPEC in the Middle East, that anytime they sold oil, the country they sold it to would have to use US dollars. That's why it's called the petrodollar. It was, I forgot the name of the agreement of this thing, but since it was in like the 60s or 70s or something like that agreement was made. But since then, the Saudis said, we're dropping this whole petrodollar thing. We're good. I'm good, bro. Thank you. Appreciate it. We're just going to deal in other currencies and whatever and blah, blah, blah. And they're doing that. You know what I mean? And so now the petrodollar is not even really the petrodollar anymore like how it used to be. It's what it's always been. It's just now people, countries are openly acknowledging that it is what it is. You know what I mean? This thing sucks. This currency is trash, and it is trash. It is garbage, and it's not even like a hate America thing. It's just, sorry, I got my tailgate down. It's not even like a hate America thing. It's just that the mechanics of how currency works is like if you were to do it in the worst way, you'd do it like the US dollar. And You could do it in worse ways, and other countries around the world have done it in worse ways, but none of those countries have had as much at stake. None of those countries had as valuable as a currency as the U.S. dollar. So, they really dropped the ball, maybe intentionally or whatever. I don't know what it was, but they messed it up. So you have CBDCs. Okay, you don't really have a right to money. You don't have a right to money. So when they pop open these CBDCs, I want you to understand something. This is going to be digital, like Bitcoin, okay? Very, very loosely like Bitcoin. It's going to be digital, where you have your wallet, I have my wallet to send money, we send it to each other, blah, blah, blah. But now because, there's this one app that controls, maybe it's multiple apps, but it's the same network that's controlling the money that you're using, or not controlling, but facilitating the use of that money, then I just want you to understand, like, the same way that your property could be confiscated, your wages could be garnished, your bank account's frozen, all that kind of stuff can now happen, but it's just way easier. It's literally some person in a department. The way they would censor somebody on Twitter is the same way they would just boop, and now you can't use money. And if that's the only money you got, man, you can't use anything, right? And I know, right? Like, it's hard to believe that this type of thing would happen in America. Like, this is something that would happen in communist China. The communist Chinese. This is something that happened there. Yeah, I feel it. Yeah, it would happen there, true, but to think that it wouldn't happen here, I don't know if that's prudent of you to do financially. We didn't think that the U.S. dollar would be in the state that it's in right now, but it is in that state. And it's going downhill fast. And so these steps are being made now to move away from a fiat dollar to a digital dollar. And with that is going to come a new set of features, pros and cons, as to why you should use it. And that brings me to Bitcoin. You see, your rights are only as good as your ability to protect them, right? If my First Amendment rights should be as good as my ability to protect them, along with the entire U.S. government's ability to back me. That's how it should go, right? My right to privacy is as good as I can protect it, along with the U.S. government's ability to back me in protecting my right to privacy, right? All that kind of stuff, freedom of religion, freedom of press, it's only as good as my ability to protect it, and along with the U.S. government's ability to back me in protecting it. But when it comes to CBDCs, digital dollars, I have no real right. The government really doesn't have to protect me in that regard. I just have to protect myself at that point. And that, man, that can be a problem. And so you have Bitcoin. Bitcoin is non-confiscatable. You don't need an ID or an email address to create a wallet. You produce a wallet. It gives you a code, a key, a private key. You keep that close to you. You hold it real tight, and nobody can access your wallet except the person or persons, who have that private key. And then from there, you can transact, send and receive payments. You can open up another wallet without an ID, without, without a email address. Don't got to put your name. You can, store or save Bitcoin in there as a savings account. You don't have to pay a fee every month. Man, dude, I was so hot a few times because, I would get to a point where, I'm buying equipment or I'm spending money, and I can only spend $7,500 a day, In one day, I can only spend $7,500 is my limit. And if I want to spend more than that, so I got to call the bank. So, my card wasn't going through. I was making purchases, and I call the bank and they're like, hey, yeah, you can't do that. What you're doing, you're not allowed to do that. It's too much. You got to do this stuff tomorrow. You hit your limit. I was like, what you talking about, boy? What you talking about? That's what that's what I was doing on the phone. What, man? It's my money. You got my money. And then she said, this is what she told me. Bro, this is today now with fiat money. I'm not even talking about CBDCs. This is just fiat money. She told me, well, let me talk to my manager, and if it's a good enough reason, then we'll increase your limit for the day. I was like, hey, hold on. What is a good enough reason to you? You know what I mean? I was like, man. She's like, well, I don't know. And then I was like, oh, yeah, you're going to get your manager for sure. You're going to get your manager. And yeah, man, I had to tell this dude, hey, that's my money. I'm spending it now. I don't need to give you a reason. It's my money. If I wanted to take out, if I was thinking about, oh, I'm going to take out all the money in my account and I'm going to just go down and I'm going to go down to Peru and, blow it all. You know what I'm saying? Literally, right? That would be my choice. If I wanted to take all my money and go down to the racetrack and put it on horse number 4, you know what I mean? Fig leaf, you know what I'm saying? That's my prerogative, bro. If I wanted to take it and I wanted to swim in it like Scrooge McDuck, if I wanted to light it on fire, okay, it's my money. I got that money. I got that money and I put it in your bank and I gave you control. And you now dictate how much of it I can spend. I got to have a reason. I got to do all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. Man, that's what a bank is like, man. So Bitcoin, you don't have none of those problems, man. You don't need a customer service person because there's never been an erroneous transaction on Bitcoin. Whatever Bitcoin is supposed to be in your wallet is always in your wallet. Your transactions always happen, both to send and receive. It runs perfectly. Most secure database on the planet. Hasn't had a nanosecond of downtime. It's just been the most perfect money. The best thing about it is no matter where you live, no matter what government you live under, they can't take it from you. And that means that your right to money, your right to your property, money-wise anyway, is something that nobody can take away from you. You have to abdicate control over that in order for them to take advantage of it. And so that's my 2 cents, man. I hope this helped you understand that, your rights are very valuable. They're precious things. Your ability to express yourself, your ability to protect yourself, your ability to, have things about yourself, for yourself, that are not for others. You know what I'm saying? Like, these things are incredibly valuable. They're the bedrock of a civilized society. They're the bedrock of a society and an economy where human beings live and can thrive and can grow and can have families and, think long-term, plan long-term, make generational moves. These things are really important. And so having a mechanism where there is no third party over the control of your money is extremely valuable. Because without money, all of those things that I just mentioned, become extremely difficult to do. You know what I mean? But yeah, man, that's my 2 cents. Hope it was helpful. Hope you found it interesting. And I hope that you don't take my word for it. I'm just some random dude on the internet. I'm nobody. I have no credentials. But I hope that this sparks within you an interest to learn more about some of the mundane things that we take for granted and the things that, we never think about failing, for lack of a better word. All right, man. Love you. Be safe. Peace.